Okay, Assalamualaikum and a very good good morning, okay? So my name is Razia Adam from University Science Malaysia. So with me today we have from Philippines, okay, our partners, okay, representative from Ateneo de Manila University, Dr. Dennis, okay, and from Malaysia we have our partners representative from University Malaysia Sarawak Unimas, okay, Dr. Johari. And then for Indonesia, our partner's representative is Dr. Abbas. Okay. For this session, basically we are looking at the micro-credential in Southeast Asia comparative study with the objective to investigate and present in a structured and unified way the regional conditions, the existing policy, practice, and regulatory framework with regards to micro-credential, or we can also call it short competence oriented, okay, courses. We also have the objective that hopefully in the later session in the afternoon, this will support inter-regional dialogue about practical aspect of micro-credential introduction, addressing the academic and policy level aspect. With that, the first part of the project for this comparative study, we have the desk research with the aim to recollect information on the current legislative state of play with regards to the topic of micro-credential in Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines. So we have questions asked for the partners to respond, and for that, we'll start with the background, as a warm-up. So Dr. Dennis, what do you think? Was it easy to conduct this desk research on the topic of micro-credential in Philippines?
Hello. Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Ratsya, and greetings everyone to the on-site and online participants. The desk review actually that we did in the Philippines had a bit of difficulty in being implemented, even if it was a desk review already, because of the policy gaps, no, as presented earlier, no, during the in the AUN context. There is still no regulation in the Philippines in terms of micro-credentials, although we have in the Philippine Development Plan. The Philippine Development Plan is the overall national development plan for a duration of 5 to 10 years. No, it's articulated there, but there are still no enabling laws. What we have currently is a guideline for technical vocational educational training, which actually included micro-credential as part of its training guidelines and accreditation process. And we have several or a lot of open universities. The main open university is the University of the Philippines Open University, which is a partner of MicroCasa project, who just launched recently their roadmap for micro-credentialing. So what we have currently is a guidance from national government, but no specific policy, which is implemented separately under the TVET or Technical Vocational Educational Training, and also by higher academic institutions, particularly the open universities. Yeah, I think that's it for now, Rajya.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. And very good morning. Thank you, Madam Moderator, Dr. Razia. To all the participants and so panelists, my name is Johari. And first of all, I would like to acknowledge the contribution and assistance of a few key persons, mainly Associate Professor Dr. Azida from USM, that assisted in preparing the content of the desk review. Of course, Dr. Razia and her team from USM, and also from our side at UNIMAS, Prof. Nara, Dr. Imran, and Prof. Pauline. And we are also very fortunate today that we have a representative from our own Malaysian qualification agency, MQA, Madam Nur Hafiza. Wave your hand, Hafiza. Yeah, she's from MQA herself. And the approach when we come about to prepare the desk review for Malaysia, it's not an issue how to find information. I think in this day and age, internet, of course, is the best place to start. And I guess you have to sift through all this information and try to find trusted sources. Basically, it's similar to any literature review or systematic literature review, SLR. You have an option to go to an academic portal like Scopus, Google Scholar, and so on, and start with a few keywords and search for related information on micro-credential from Malaysia. There are quite a few papers. And I would say the biggest challenge, it is still a very fast-moving area when it comes to micro-credential. So what we have today, unfortunately, when it comes to desk review, I would say probably is a bit outdated in terms of the content, but at least we have some of the fundamental important information. When we go back to the internet, again, in Malaysia, luckily, we have MQA itself as the trusted source of information. So later when I elaborate a little bit about the GGP document, the good guideline and practice document from MQA, that's the main source of information. And apart from that, the other challenge that we had in Malaysia, there are two main bodies that sort of champion micro-credential. One from the academic point of view, which is handled by the Ministry of Higher Education, MOHE or MOHE. And the other one is from the Ministry of Human Resource. So that one is from the industry perspective. So both work in parallel and work together to come up with a few guidelines. And probably the last thing that I want to share, MQA has a portal where all the IHL in Malaysia can voluntarily register their micro-credential. So the keyword there, voluntarily. So far, and what is interesting, up to 11,000 courses, micro-credential already registered. And the reason the number is so high, because it is simply an unbundling of existing degree courses. And second point, which I think is interesting, all of them are actually from the private colleges and university. Unfortunately, none of the public university actually register. And it makes sense because for the private sector, the IHL, micro-credential is seen as two things. One, as a bait to get the student to register for the cash cow, which is the full degree program. So they offer micro-credential as a free program, which is just part of the full degree program. And the other one is, of course, for visibility. For private sector, visibility is very important to attract new students. For the public university in Malaysia, there are 20 public universities. And the second part of the desk review is to sift through each of the university, whether they have a dedicated page for micro-credential, private sector or the private colleges also, we have to sift manually. And there are a lot actually. And under each of these dedicated website, you have to sift through information. Not to say cheat, I use AI a little bit. So the last part, when we downloaded the list of courses from MQA portal, I use the ChatGPT Advanced. There is advanced code interpreter module. So you just upload the CSV file and it come up with all these exploratory data analysis, which is, I would say, interesting. So it can tell you what are the most common terms being used for the micro-credential courses. It can tell you some statistic about how many courses from each of the service provider and so on. So we use a bit of tool in order to cut down the amount of information that you need to find when it comes to the desk research. So at the end of the day, I would say there are element of challenges, and mainly because there are too much information and you have to sort of sift through the information, and also at the same time to ensure that those are from trusted sources. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Johari. So both Dr. Johari and Dr. Abah has the advantages over Dennis and me because they are from the computer background, while both of us are not. Okay, Dennis is health, while I'm from economics background. So moving on from Dennis, policy gap in the Philippines, and then Dr. Johari, challenges in Malaysia. Okay, Dr. Abbas, what about the Indonesian experience in doing this desk research? Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good. Is it afternoons already or not yet? Very good morning, everyone. Thank you. Regarding your questions, was that easy? I may call this as a disruptive, very disruptive, not only for the lecturers or teachers, but also the students. And in Indonesia, it's like quite similar what Malaysia has experienced. Those with the terminology about micro credentials is like newly introduced, and what we heard, but we did some practicality already. For example, like some fast forwards and like very active promoters are the Ministry of Labors. They are doing some sort of like skill certifications, something like that. And in the Ministry of Higher Education, Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Educations, basically just newly introduced, which is what we call like digital transformation. Starting from 2020, the ministers introduced a program called MBKM, Merdeka Belajar. That Merdeka Belajar means like independent learning, but cannot easily translate directly as an independent learnings. So when I did this, contributed by also Dr. Alvin from Unsrats, we are coming from the public university. And similar to Malaysia, those very active body are in the private sectors and private university, and also the open university in Indonesia. So basically, the minister has introduced a new regulations in 2020, which is like allowing the students or those graduates to take other courses or micro courses in other field or even outside of campus. And then the other, for example, like even our president are not, means like distinctively point out, like as a 2045, Indonesia Unggul, excellence, because with the bonus of demography of the young peoples in Indonesia, highlighting that the needs to do or to learn IT kind of things. So no wonder there are many private sectors offering some sort of skill educations, but they are lacking of the trusted kind of providers or issuance kind of things. So in that regulations, basically, like as can be used as underlying regulations, but somehow just 2 months ago, the minister also introduced a new standard in higher educations, which is like, it's a simplifying actually to adapt with a very fast growing issue in this kind of thing. And then specifically mentions also about, we call it credential micro or micro credentials, meanings like allowing the institutions, the higher educations institutions, especially the public, to immediately act, not only those in the industry, but also for this public university also need to have an act, I think, like in line with highlighted by Prof. Amins and others in the earlier discussions. We introduced a new national standard on higher education, and that basically emphasizing against about the micro credentials. So I can say not that easy. I call it myself as a very disruptive, because it's even the teachers need to adapt really quickly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Abbas, for touching on regulations, okay, policy and regulation in Malaysia, in Indonesia. So with that, we move on to the core questions. Okay, Dr. Dennis, what are the national policies in Philippines with regards to micro-credential and also in terms of recognition and also touching on quality assurance system? Please, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. As I mentioned earlier, the policy gap in the Philippines regarding micro-credential actually is showing in the implementation process, such that it's actually disjointed. No? So I mentioned the technical vocational education training has adopted already a micro-credential training guidelines and regulations, including accreditation and recognition. But in the higher education context, there is none such guideline. So it's actually on a self-regulatory mode that universities, particularly the open universities, are actually adapting or developing their own guidelines. The University of the Philippines, Open University, which is a partner of the MicroCasa project, just launched their micro-credential roadmap last month, no, when Dr. Carlos Cruz was in the Philippines, no, that was also the occasion of their launching of their roadmap on micro credentialing. The other aspect that sort of adds to the confusion is that since there is no direct regulation, other government agencies are coming into the picture, no? Like the Department of Labor and Employment, as Dr. Abbas was saying, labor and employment is very much interested in micro-credentials because of the need of the industry partners. So the current initiative actually for micro-credential in the Philippines is actually a push from the labor and industry side, while we're waiting for the educational institutions, including the technical vocational part, to be able to sort of harmonize themselves. No, the harmonization actually is within the context of the PQF or Philippine Qualifications Framework, which is actually present in all ASEAN member states. What was mentioned earlier as the NQF, the National Qualifications Framework. And this National Qualifications Framework actually are sort of harmonized as well at the ASEAN level through the ASEAN Qualifications Framework, so that eventually this vision of ASEAN being an economic community can materialize, no? Because you need to have a qualification framework that is acceptable across the different countries, so that graduates from Vietnam or Cambodia or Thailand can actually have a qualifications that are transferable, portable to other ASEAN member states. But that's still a long process, as the policies of different countries vary. And in the case of the Philippines, we're still grappling with our own PQF, Philippine Qualifications Framework, which eventually needs to be harmonized with the ASEAN Qualifications Framework, and micro credential being just one part of this qualification framework. I think I'll stop there for the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Dennis. So before we move on with the ASEAN harmonizations on micro-credential, perhaps we can go back to the country level. So Dr. Johari, okay, can you explain about Malaysian national policy with regards to micro-credential in terms of recognition as well as quality assurance? Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Razia. I think I better start with the details about MQA because that's the central focus for Malaysia. So MQA stands for Malaysian Qualification Agency. It is a statutory body which falls under the Ministry of Higher Education. Correct me if I'm wrong, Hafiza. And it started as a division under the Ministry of Higher Education at one time, but upgraded into a full statutory body. So it's still a government agency, and it foresees all matters related to the quality of the development, the delivery of programs in Malaysia, either at the public sector or the private sector when it comes to institution of higher learning. So it is very matured. The process, the procedures of all aspects of education is covered under MQA. and they released the first version of the GGP, we call it GGP, Guideline to Good Practices for Micro-Credential, back in 2020. So I think they started preparing that back in 2018, 2019. And the first version was released in 2020, which covers 7 different sections. Definition is there, the justification for micro-credential, the principle of good micro-credential, the general policies for micro-credentials, the development, the design, the delivery, and recognition of micro-credential. And the last section, section number 9, is probably the most important, the quality assurance of micro-credentials. But I would like to also let the participant bring this into the discussion in the afternoon. In my personal opinion, all these quality assurance policies and so on are very good, but there is a need to balance, because as what Armin mentioned this morning, micro-credential is a very fast moving, I would say, medium. And the element of quality assurance has to be on par with this fast moving medium. So you cannot wait for 6 months, 12 months to get recognized for a single micro-credential. So what is good, MQA has taken a very positive step. What they have done, this year they launched the QASAMC, Quality Assurance Standalone Micro-Credential, correct? Okay. And the idea is like this. So they have selected 8 pilot universities, 6 from the public university and 2 from the private university. And this university, once they have been accredited as the certifier of micro-credential. So we don't have to go direct to MQA, because that will not be scalable when you have thousands and thousands of micro-credential that you need to be recognized. So this 8 university can be the branch of recognition. But we don't have one for Sabah and Sarawak yet and have visa, so we have to go to the peninsula to get accredited. So hopefully soon. So this is one of the approach to sort of speed up the process of recognition and so on. And the other very positive development is the formation of the consortium called M-Credible under the Ministry of Higher Education. So again, a few universities have been selected as the pilot and was launched last year, but I guess they are still looking into certain details like which platform to be used, which credential service to be used, and so on. And still something that all the party are looking at very closely at the moment. So coming back to our discussion on the quality assurance, Manola just now discussed a very important aspect, which is the definition of micro-credential. The one from UNESCO, I think, is very interesting. Almost all bodies across every country talk about one aspect of the definition, which is the trusted provider. Who can be the issuer of micro-credential? No issue about university, either public or private. That is an accepted aspect of the issuer. You can have industry as issuer. As I mentioned, in Malaysia, the Ministry of Human Resources is looking from the industrial perspective. So you can appoint certain company as the issuer. But what is interesting about the UNESCO definition, they include a community as an issuer, which I cannot find in the Malaysian definition of micro-credential or maybe in another country. What it means, let's say in a community, you have someone with expertise on certain skill, medicine or arts and so on, and you want to recognize their skills and their achievement. So rather than going to a university to get recognized for their micro-credential, why don't the community itself, who knows that person very closely, to become an issuer? Of course, there are a lot of logistic challenges and so on. I guess my personal experience, there is probably no money that you can generate from that particular aspect of micro-credential. We have to be realistic. Money is also one of the elements, especially from the industry point of view and so on. And probably is there somewhere in the plan, but not the top priority. So Prof. Nara and our team is probably trying to look into that aspect as part of the micro-CASA project. So to summarize, the MQA document, the GGP, Guidelines to Good Practices, is now the key focus for all university. How it works, MQA will issue a circular saying that yes, there is a GGP. The latest version coming soon, I think probably this coming 1 or 2 months, version 2 if I'm not mistaken. And then it will pass this GGP to the institution of higher learning. So when it comes to the institution of higher learning, usually they will take their own approach. They will have two committee, the steering committee that look into the policy aspect, and also the technical committee that do the implementation at each university. So the GGP mainly talks about things in general, but the details on how to implement is back to the own university actually. Thank you, Razia.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Johari, for sharing the Malaysian experience on national policy recognition and quality assurance related to micro-credential. So now, Dr. Abbas, maybe you can elaborate further on the Indonesian perspective on this topic.
Again, maybe I don't want to say kind of similar, but we are neighboring countries. In Indonesia, actually, there is what we call BNSP, Badan Nasional Sertifikasi Profesi, or National Agency on Professional Certifications. And that agency is under the presidents directly. And then this agency usually issue a certificate to a trusted provider. So we call it Lembaga Sertifikasi Profesi, something like that. And then those who been listed on that can issue some sort of certificates for what a kind of like a short course or short micro course needed in the industry, something like that. So in practice, even private university, also public university, also applying to this. For example, like those with the growing demand on, for example, like AI engineers, data scientists, or cybersecurity kind of course, usually being handled by the private sectors. Right now, the university is also applying that so that can at least means that become one of the trusted providers. So that's one thing. But meanings like higher educations, collaborating with the others agency. But the others, the Indonesians Ministry of Higher Education, Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology, which in specific directorates of higher educations, also experimenting from like 2021 against with the Merdeka Belajar kind of things. They call it like KMME credential micro Merdeka, something like Indonesia, something like. Those programs actually newly created, involving, as I mentioned in earlier statement, that allow the university to exchanging the students, and then those from various field of study. For example, like the IT case, when never being introduced some sort of as I mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, remember program Permata means like exchange students among the university for the sake of equal quality of education, because we are a big country, and then inviting exchange students from many university in Indonesia. But then, as a regulations, this is like acknowledging the credits they earn from others. Actually, in Indonesia, there are two types. One is the micro credentials that newly introduced. The other one is like what we call is prior learnings assessment and recognition kind of thing. This is also defined. This is also defined in higher educations, but as regulations. Again, I call it as disruptive because the in technical implementation, there is still problem, especially when comes to the quality assurance on this matter. We've been used to with the quality assurance on macro levels, micro course levels, institution related to the accreditation mechanisms. We have like 8 standard. Now with the newly introduced, I mentioned earlier, like just 2 months ago, in 2023, Ministry of Education introduced number 53 something. I haven't really mentioned in this because we did this district search earlier than the regulations has just arrived. So basically, in regard to a recognition, we have some sort of simple standard, but in terms of micro credential, this is still in debate. We need to discuss this in the afternoon session later on, and when we want to tackle these matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abbas, for highlighting the similarities as well as the differences across the Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia. So moving on now, we are looking at the practical aspect of the implementations of micro-credential. So back to Dr. Dennis. With regards to the digitalization of credential, how is the situation in Philippines? Okay, does the higher education institution use a specific technological platform for micro-credential?
Yeah, thank you, Raj. Yeah, I'll follow through what Dr. Abbas was describing in terms of the sort of differentiation, no, between the prior learning. In the Philippines, we have this Professional Regulations Commission, which is actually looking at continuing professional education, which is actually more extensive and more systematic in terms of offering these credits to specific professionals. So in terms of the digitalization, for example, they have a more established system of being able to produce the credits after you've taken, for example, a short webinar or a short course, no, that is from an accredited institution. And that becomes part now of your continuing professional education as you apply, no, for recertification or renewal of licenses. So that's moving for quite some time, and that's quite and there's already a digital platform which is maintained by the Philippine Professional Regulations Commission in the Philippines. For the higher education institutions and technical vocational educational trainings, there is no one system that is operated harmoniously between those two systems. The technical vocational educational training programs, which has a more solid policy context and guidelines, has their own a platform which they use for issuing what they call the national certificates. And the national certificates are the ones that are being presented by the students, no, to be able to apply for job or for their further qualification. For the higher education institutions, as I mentioned, it's up to the university at the university level, no. So since it's just starting in some of the universities, it's still evolving, and hopefully probably with Microcasa as a project that can help probably facilitate these things. We will have some initiatives that go along the way of collaboration among higher educational institutions. But of course, the private universities and private institutions and industries have their own credentialing process. So which actually becomes now a siloed approach, no? It's very siloed until probably the national mandates, national laws, or self-regulation probably comes into the picture. Yeah, so yeah, that's it now for that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Dennis. So now we move on with Dr. Johari about the state of the digitalization of micro-credential or credentialing in Malaysia. Okay, we can mention also the technical platform that is being used for the Malaysian higher education institutions.
Thank you, Dr. Razia. I think this one we can go back a few years ago. when MOOC was the hot topic. But now nobody talks about MOOC. And the reason I bring the issue about MOOC, most of the IHL in Malaysia sort of piggyback on their previous MOOC platform. So MOOC, previously, the choice of platform was open learning from Australia, Adam Primo, and USM was one of the champions through Prof. Karim Alias. It started as a free service, but then of course they are commercial entity, then they start charging. There's nothing wrong with that. Either you go for open source or a commercial provider. So MOOC was using open learning. When we talk about individual university, either private or public, if you are offering within the university, there's no issue about the LMS part. Anybody can use their choice of LMS, either the open source, Moodle, and so on. I think in Malaysia, in general, is a customized Moodle platform. Seldom we see people invest on Blackboard and so on. edX, Open edX, and all those MOOC platform was used previously as well. The issue when we go across IHL, how do you go about to recognize MC offered from other IHL within Malaysia, within Asian, even through EU and so on? As long as there is a technical solution, which I believe, yes, they can talk to one another through API and so on, or through the cloud, then there shouldn't be a problem. So either way, whether you have a single platform that covers all the players in a country, or you have multitude of platform, those are possible. And either you go for commercial or open source, again, those are possible. So what we want to do, we want to minimize as much as possible for the user themselves, either the academician or the students, not to have multiple login. So you can use single sign-on, and there are other options as well. Now, the second part of micro-credential, which is probably slightly different from MOOC, is the credential itself, the issuance of badge. You can offer micro-credential without a badge, that is straightforward, but when it comes to the badge itself, the digital badge, at the moment, I would say the current state of art, you need to go for a commercial service provider. Open Learning has their own inbuilt open cred as the credentialing part. We are looking also at a few commercial entity like A Credential, but we were discussing yesterday that there is option from CIMIA. They have their own, I would say, open source credential system. And Abbas also mentioned, I think Abbas can share after this about the insignia. And that is very important if you want to go across institution kind of MC recognition. Now, two issues comes from this. There is issue of sustainability. If you go for the commercial route and you want to sustain yourself, eventually you have to charge the participant. Again, there's nothing wrong with that kind of business model. The second issue, when Prof. Carlos mentioned about usage of AI and so on, and we assume in general MC is delivered through an online medium. And you can have a physical micro-credential, you can have a hybrid. The problem is we don't want to create or increase the gap between the urban and the rural communities. So let's say we focus on MC, we focus on online delivery of MC. What happened to the people or the participant in the rural communities? Are they being left out from our intention of delivering micro-credential? So we have to be careful about that aspect. Nothing different from MOOC last time. And we tried as much as possible to bring MOOC to the rural areas. Of course, infrastructure is an issue, but yes, it is possible. So AI is a very good tool in order to speed up the process of development, the process of recognition and so on. But there are challenges because usually when it comes to AI, the technical requirement usually increases. In terms of the inference part, you need a GPU if you run it locally, but most of the time you use cloud. But then back to the issue, do you have connectivity to do that or not? So the technical aspect, in most cases, solvable. You dump a lot of money, then problem solved. But then that raised the issue of sustainability. And Malaysia still at the point of trying to figure out this thing. So the last part that I want to add, the I did mention about the consortium called M Credible. Part of the M Credible pilot that involved the 8 university in Malaysia, 6 public, 2 private. They also launched a platform called Collective, focused on micro-credential. And they promised 6 months. That was early this year. So I guess 6 months is over, but we are still waiting for the actual platform being shared across the university. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Johari. So basically, you mentioned about the needs to talk to each other. So I hope all of us, we are on the right track. That's what we are doing here. And there is more opportunity in the afternoon grouping sessions for those online as well as the audience in front of us. Okay, so for now, maybe Dr. Abbas, you can wrap up this by sharing about the Indonesian experience on the digitalizations of micro-credential, the technological platform, okay, the credentialings. Thank you. Over
Yeah.
to you.
Thank you. I would like highlight like what the Indonesian has been doing actually. We bring, I mean, it's like we've experienced some sort of falsifications of certificates actually in higher educations. And then the ministers introduced some system which is centralized mechanism on the issuance of the certificates in the higher educations. So that exists up to today. So whenever someone will graduates, meaning that needs to require some sort of technical mechanism from the university, contacting to the central database of Ministry of Higher Educations, Indonesia. That's available for the macro course. I mean, it's like the study programs. And for those in the institutions, like higher educations, we usually also implement what we call a complementary certificate, where student can take some learning experience and getting some certificate and then accompanying it with the main certificate. This is also exists. But the higher education already regulate with the in 2022, where, for example, like in the issuance of education credentials, competence and professional certificates should be digitally verifiable through an electronic system. For higher educations like us, I mean, it's like the formal institution, public or private, those are okay. I mean, being controlled by the minister. But similar what Dr. Johari has pointed out, that UNESCO defined that those non-profit organizations or any kind of organization can also issue such kind of, this is the missing links actually. We have problems on these matters, like how it is easily recognize those digital credentials. Of course, the community is not silenced. They are been working hard to have like adopting those from the big players, like many IT giants have introduced some sort of system for credential issuance. But again, since this is very, how to say, I call also a kind of disruptions in this field of digital issuance of that credential. The point is how to equally recognize. I call it kind of a hacks in higher education that the Ministry of Higher Education has been introduced, meaning like with independent learning, a student can go outside of campus, get the experience, then get some certificates from that independent body. But again, when come to the campus have some system to map or to recognize. This is what exists running within these 3 years, yeah, up to today, what we call mechanism to recognize converting. But this is in higher educations. I cannot answer those outside of the higher educations. This is also a problem among us. I call it in the university level or diplomacy level, it is fine. Government can control it, but in the very public ones, for example, like training organizers and so on, it really depends to the credibility of that organization who issue that credentials. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Abbas. Given the limitations of time, so we do not have time for question and answer. Okay, but what Dr. Abbas has mentioned about the missing link, okay, connecting the dots, okay. So we will have the opportunity later. Okay, so everyone can contribute in the afternoon session and the grouping. For the next part, okay, my colleague from Shimia will be sharing on the online survey. So both the online survey as well as what we discussed just now on the desk research will contribute towards regional micro-credential comparative study, which hopefully will come out with a paper, okay, on comparative study on micro-credential in Southeast Asian universities. And with the roundtable discussion input as well, we'll come out with a white paper. So save your questions for the later in the afternoon. So for now, thank you for our panels, Dr. Dennis from Ateneo, Dr. Johari from Unimas, and Dr. Abbas, our host from UB. Okay, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Razia. Thank you.